All right, let's do this. Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of other things. The legislature doesn't like Proposition 13. Why? Because it constrains the amount of money they have available to do their special projects. They don't like it. There's a requirement that 2/3 vote is required to raise our taxes. Why is that a good thing? Because if it's only a majority vote, a majority can figure out, I'm not going to tax myself to build my roads, I'm going to tax you to build my roads. And that's a pretty good deal for me. Not such a good deal for you. One of the reasons we have that 2/3 vote requirement in our Constitution is to prevent that kind of thing from happening. Last year, our legislature tried to do a $20 billion increase in taxes. And they did that. That's odd. I got both of them. I don't know if people hold me, that's part of the problem. Is that better? They tried to do a $20 billion increase in taxes. They called it revenue neutral. 20 billion, revenue neutral. Now I know our math departments have gotten pretty bad in this state. Our public education system is now 49th in the country, but I suspect even the 50th one in the country knew that 20 billion is not revenue neutral. John Kupal of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association and I at the Claremont Institute's Constitutional Jurisprudence Center joined together and we filed suit to stop that, saying it violates our state constitution. You can't do that. And Governor Schwarzenegger ultimately vetoed the bill because of our litigation. I helped launch the Orange County litigation on that pension reform. In the Central Valley, the entire agricultural industry of this state is drying up and people's livelihoods are being lost because of a federal court order saying that the Delta smelt is getting sucked up into some of the pumps. Now you remember John Roberts, our Chief Justice, when he was testifying in his confirmation hearings. And the environmentalists were going after him for a line in one of his opinions about a hapless toad. They thought that that meant he wasn't sensitive enough to the environment. The hapless toad was my case. I have to admit, we got him in trouble. What we were arguing was that the arroyo toad, which is a California critter, he doesn't cross interstate lines. He's too small to be an article of commerce. There's not enough meat on those legs to make a good little frog's legs meal out of him. But because he's not commerce and he doesn't go interstate, he's beyond the power of the federal government. Because the clause in the Constitution says the Congress has power to regulate commerce among the states. And silly me, I think that means it's got to be commerce and it's got to be interstate before they have the power to regulate it. The Delta smelt is the same issue. The Delta smelt, a tiny little, it's not even a fish, it's a little, it's a smelt. And you could put dozens of them in a fry pan and still get a good breakfast out of it. They're not an article of commerce. They don't go interstate. And it's beyond the reach of the federal government, as our Constitution is properly understood. Now what that means is, if we adhere to the Constitution, the policy judgment that should be made in this state, we may say, you know, protecting the Delta smelt and losing our agriculture industry isn't worth it. And we're not even protecting the whole, I mean, the Delta smelt is not going to get endangered if we turn the pumps back on. The dumber ones that swim into the pumps will, but the rest of them, if we believe in Darwin, the rest of them will say, I'm not going there, my buddy just did. Right? And then we get the water running. But see, that's, in our system of government, that's a judgment for Californians to make, not for bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. And thank you. See, our founders were unbelievably wise. They recognized if you put the decision-making and the people that have to pay the costs and generate the benefits, that they're going to get the balance right. If you put the decision-making someplace else, 3,000 miles away, they're probably going to get it wrong, because they'll tout the benefits and they won't have any conception of the costs they're bearing, right? And that's why federalism is important. That's why sticking to the constitutional limits on national power is important. Same thing goes on here in this state. How many of our local cities are being driven into bankruptcy because the state of Sacramento is drawing monies from us, right? The reason we left monies and decision-making at the most local level possible is because we get the benefits, but we pay the costs. I was thinking back in the November 2008 election. We had a bond initiative here in Long Beach, right? It was going to widen some of the streets and line them with palm trees. And what did we say in Long Beach to that initiative? We said, you know, there's a recession coming. It's probably not the best use of our money right now. What did some of our local elected officials, including Linda Sanchez, say right when it was done? The people voted against it. Well, let's just go get part of the stimulus money to pay for it. Now I ask you, if we didn't think, we were the ones that were going to get the benefits from that, if we didn't think it was worth the cost, why in heaven's name would the people of Rhode Island think it's worth the cost for us? I know why we would think it was nice for Rhode Island to pay for that for us, but the flip side of it is also true. If the folks in Rhode Island vote something down, why should we be paying for that? And we're paying a lot more for Rhode Island projects than they're paying for ours, I gotta tell you. But that's the problem. We have disconnected the people that pay the bill from the people that reap the benefits, and almost by guarantee we're not gonna get that in balance. How do we get back on track in this state? By enforcing the limits on governmental power that are in our Constitution. Now, I got to tell you, I've been, for the last month, getting attacked by my opponent. I've kind of taken it as a badge of honor because he knows that I'm gaining some traction. But I'm going to lash out here for a minute because I'm taking on these public employee pensions. I think the last opportunity we have to save this state is a faithful adherence to that constitutional provision that makes those illegal. My opponent, the district attorney from Los Angeles, is one of the guys taking that double dip in pension, and it's preposterous. He is going to be making over $400,000 a year in pension if he gets elected Attorney General. As a government servant, we've got thousands and thousands of government clerks in this state who are drawing in excess of six-figure salaries in pensions for the next 40 years with full benefits. The Cadillac plans that you heard talked about, they're getting them. How many of us have those in the private sector? And the economy is down and people in the private sector are getting laid off. And what are they saying? We got to raise taxes because we got to keep paying for these pensions. There's something wrong with that, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on in this country... What's going on in this country is that people have gotten angry, and they're getting angrier, and they're getting angrier, and we have an opportunity to vent that anger at the ballot box. We ought to be careful if they try and shut that down, because what happens when revolutions can't play out at the ballot box, all right? Don't let that happen. Let's win at the ballot box this November to make sure we take our government back. There's one other issue I want to talk about, and then I'll open it up to questions. There's a little bill that came out of Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago. A little bill. 1/6 of the nation's economy, this little bill was. Now, Obamacare, socialized medicine. They first tried to get it through by pretending they weren't going to vote for it. Right? And by the way, people across the country rose up against it, and they backed away from that unconstitutional procedure. You watch this. On that Saturday, they were going to have a vote where the House of Representatives didn't need to put their names to it. They were just going to deem it passed. Well, that violates Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution. And all of you that have your pocket constitutions could look, and it's right there. And I think a lot of them were surprised. One, that you were looking, and two, that it was there. Because I think, like the bill, they hadn't read that either. Yeah, they got to pass it first, and then we'll see what's in it. There are now 18 attorney generals around the country that have filed suit challenging the constitutionality of that.
Let's make it 19.
This is the largest state in the country. That bill is going to impact us more than anywhere else, and our attorney general is sitting on the sidelines. That's a shame. You elect me Attorney General, I will not only join that suit, but I guarantee you, with my constitutional expertise, by the time that gets up to the Supreme Court, I will be designing the suit. I will be designing the argument that I need for Justice Kennedy. I will probably argue that case in the Supreme Court, and by gosh, we're going to get 5 votes to strike that thing down.